On this Wednesday night, demonstrations, disruptions, and no resolutions in sight. Pipeline protesters confront the Deputy Prime Minister.
We're not getting security.
The calls for calm.
That's unacceptable.
And the economic consequences. Plus, why this issue is so complicated for First Nations. Ship no longer shunned. Welcome news for everyone on a quarantined cruise. Mysterious messages from space. Are we really alone out there? And one-on-one with Canada's #1 soccer star.
I've never played soccer just for the goals.
Christine Sinclair on her success and her goal to advance the game.
Every chance that a guy gets, I want a girl to get.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Disagreement over a natural gas pipeline in northern BC is again disrupting trade and travel in this country. A key rail line in southern Ontario is still blocked by people showing solidarity for opponents of the Coastal GasLink pipeline that crosses traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en people. And today a new blockade went up on the CN rail line just west of Winnipeg. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, traveling in West Africa, said today protesters must obey the law.
We recognize the important democratic right, and we will always defend it, of peaceful protest. This is an important part of our democracy in Canada, but we're also a country of the rule of law, and we need to make sure those laws are respected.
But police have not moved in to remove the protesters. Hundreds of freight trains and Via Rail passenger trains are sitting idle for a 7th day. And this happened to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland today. She was blocked from entering Halifax City Hall by self-described land defenders who refused to make room for her. She did eventually manage to slip inside and then had this to say.
It is very important for all people in Canada, including government officials, to be able to go about their rightful and legitimate business, even as other Canadians are expressing their right to peaceful protest.
How to resolve this remains the question, though. Indigenous rights can be a political minefield, and so is the complex issue of hereditary leadership within the Wet'suwet'en people. And who has the authority to say yes or no to a pipeline? Michael Couture has our top story tonight.
For nearly a week, one of Canada's busiest rail corridors has been ground to a halt by the Tyendinaga Mohawk blockade. It's in support of the Wet'suwet'en Nation protesting the proposed Coastal GasLink pipeline in northern BC. And there's now a second camp a little further down the rail line.
The only way to get Canada to stop for a second and to say, hey, what are we doing, is to stop their money, right?
Politicians have taken notice and say the economic impact is real.
Do we have a report that there's been in excess of 100 trains that have been held back, if you will? Well, I can only surmise that a number of those trains have energy on them, Saskatchewan energy. I can only surmise that a number of those trains will have Saskatchewan potash on them.
The federal transport minister is calling on protesters to respect court injunctions that were supposed to end the demonstrations.
So I can't accept more mail.
But this video posted of what Mohawks did to a previous injunction might foreshadow their response to any others.
There's the court injunction.
The RCMP has not moved in yet, and the finance minister is appealing to the protesters on behalf of all Canadians.
We think about the people impact. I mean, people can't get to the places they want to go if they're impeded to use the rail system. And of course, we always need to remember that a lot of our food in our country goes by rail.
My advice to the Crown would be to establish a process with Wet'suwet'en peoples.
The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations is imploring the Crown to start a dialogue. Perry Bellegarde says the government must sit down with both the Wet'suwet'en Band Councils who support the pipeline project and the hereditary chiefs who oppose it.
Get into the big house and feast. We have our own processes to resolve disputes. Go back to that. Use ceremony, use our elders, use our traditions to bring about a resolvement to this issue.
Still, there are many in the community who want the pipeline and say the hereditary chiefs and the protesters don't speak for everyone.
We need jobs. Like, if you go in one place where you're isolated and everything, you know, the band can only, get so much job.
Tate worries that he and many others who support the pipeline won't be heard because of the protests across the country. Michael Couteur, Global News, Ottawa.
Who speaks for the Wet'suwet'en people and who has authority over the 22,000 square kilometres of land in northern BC is not straightforward. There's confusion and misunderstanding. And there's word a call has gone out for a meeting of Wet'suwet'en leaders to resolve it. The divide is between some hereditary chiefs who are organized by clan and anchored in cultural traditions, and band councils created under the Indian Act who are elected to represent the people on reserves. Some hereditary chiefs oppose the pipeline and believe they have authority over the territory, which has never been ceded and is not subject to a treaty. But all 20 elected band councils along the route, including 5 elected Wet'suwet'en band councils, representing about 2,800 people, support the pipeline and have signed benefit agreements with Coastal GasLink. Both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and BC Premier John Horgan back the terminal and the pipeline.
There's a misunderstanding broadly of what hereditary leadership is, and we're working hard to figure that out. The vast majority of people in that territory want to see progress, and I believe that they have to figure that out.
If completed, the Coastal GasLink pipeline would supply natural gas to LNG Canada, which is building an $18 billion terminal in Kitimat, BC. It would export liquefied natural gas to Asia. The future of another big resource project, this one in Alberta, is hanging in the balance. The Teck Frontier oil sands proposal has taken 9 years to go through the federal approval process. 14 Indigenous groups have signed benefit agreements with the company. Now, on the eve of the deadline for a federal decision, one Indigenous group wants it delayed. Heather Yourex-West explains why.
The Athabasca Chippewa First Nation has fought against oil sands development for years, opposing project after project in the region. But in the fall of 2018, after months of negotiations, it signed a conditional benefits agreement with Teck.
If we were going to lose this one, well, we better make an agreement to put stipulations in place that's going to protect the environment.
But the nation didn't just want assurances from the resource company. Its support was also contingent on environmental protection work by both the federal and provincial governments. The nation says Alberta hasn't held up its side of the bargain.
We agreed to this development. We give our approval 100%, and still the Alberta government reneges on living up to the commitments.
Chief Adam still wants Ottawa to approve the project, but he says that approval needs to come with conditions that Alberta fund a community-based monitoring program and do more to protect caribou habitat.
From our perspective, a delay on this project would be the same as rejecting it. We have overcome every environment issue that has been put in front of us, and we'll continue to work with all 14 First Nation communities to address their concerns in an ongoing way.
The province says it's met with Chief Adam a dozen times since January and is working to address the nation's concerns. Although the provincial environment minister says he suspects the pushback is more about money. Still, this political analyst believes by coming forward, the First Nation has made it difficult for the federal government to approve the project outright.
It would have to be either they're going to postpone the decision or they do accept it, but based on a set of fairly rigorous conditions.
Cabinet's final decision on the proposal is due at the end of the month. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
The new boss of BP, one of the world's biggest oil and gas companies, says it's time to reinvent itself. Bernard Looney wants BP to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050 or sooner. He says BP will cut carbon content by 50% by 2050 by selling products that are not fossil fuels. It says it will install methane measurement equipment at all its processing sites by 2023 so it can cut leakage. Carbon dioxide and methane both contribute to global warming. The new CEO says we all want energy that is reliable and affordable, but that is no longer enough. It must also be cleaner. It will require nothing short of reimagining energy as we know it. Looney says more details on how BP intends to do it will come in September. There are reports from China tonight. The number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 and the number of deaths has jumped dramatically overnight, though it's not exactly clear why. According to Chinese media, there are now more than 60,000 cases, most of them in China. That's a jump of 15,000, nearly 10 times the increase reported yesterday. More than 1,300 people are now confirmed to have died. These new numbers are contradicting what the World Health Organization said earlier about the numbers slowly dropping.
That must be interpreted with extreme caution. This outbreak could still go in any direction.
In China, just over 2,000 new cases were reported today. That's the lowest number of daily new cases in 2 weeks. Overall, the World Health Organization says there are now more than 45,000 confirmed cases, most in China, and more than 1,100 people have died. There is some good news tonight for thousands of cruise ship passengers waiting and wondering when they can get back on land. After being denied entry by multiple countries, the MS Westerdam says it has finally found somewhere to dock. Goomansingh explains.
After being rejected by 5 countries, cheers for Cambodia. Holland America Line posting a message expressing gratitude to authorities in that country. No one is ill on board, unlike the Diamond Princess.
It really is an exhausting day here. Sounds crazy when there's nothing to do.
Passengers on that ship are under quarantine until the 19th. The Diamond Princess, docked in Yokohama, has the most concentrated number of COVID-19 cases outside of China.
We must continue to try to stop the virus while preparing countries for the arrival of the virus.
London recorded its first case the same day. More than 80 people were told they're being released from isolation. The British nationals who were flown back from Wuhan will go home Thursday. In Beijing, a government spokesperson said right now the epidemic situation is still grim, but with a series of strong measures, we have also seen some positive changes. The World Health Organization says the situation in China appears to be stabilizing, but the fight isn't over.
Hammer this virus and prevent it from being a serious problem or a crisis in the rest of the world.
As the fight against COVID-19 continues, the Director General called for calm and solidarity. Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Journalists, politicians, and readers across the country are paying tribute to writer Christie Blatchford, who died today.
I think what distinguishes this case is that many...
Blatchford's career spanned 5 decades as a columnist and reporter and author of books. She worked at 4 major daily newspapers and made appearances on Global National. She's remembered as a fearless, tenacious reporter with searing wit and a passion for human stories. She was diagnosed with lung cancer in November. Blatchford was 68 years old. Scientists have a new mystery on their hands tonight. Coming up, the strange sounds coming from far and away. Canadian prime ministers are sometimes put in a delicate diplomatic situation when they travel abroad. They're under pressure to speak up for Canadian values the host country doesn't necessarily support. David Akin explains what happened to Prime Minister Trudeau during a visit to the West African country of Senegal.
These boys and girls are becoming better basketball players with some Canadian help. But Justin Trudeau thinks the basketball help will make them better citizens.
We know that the impact that we can have as a society by empowering our young people goes far beyond.
Like prime ministers before him, Trudeau's overseas visits aim at building people-to-people relationships. And on this trip, that included Trudeau learning about Africa's past. Trudeau visited Gorée Island. That's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that describes the experience of slavery. Between the 15th and 19th century, more than 15 million people, mostly from West Africa, were sold into slavery. Most were sent to the Americas, including Canada.
We must remember the horrors and the tragedies of the past and reflect on their impacts today and into the future.
Many departed from Gorée Island's slave market onto a waiting ship through what is known as the Door of No Return. Trudeau and Senegal President Macky Sall talked about trade and security, but a Canadian Prime Minister is often pushed to tie exports of lumber and grain to exports of Canadian values. Here in Senegal, for example, it is illegal to be lesbian, gay, trans, or queer, while rape was just criminalized last month. But Trudeau prefers not to lecture.
Senegal is a country that has succeeded tremendously.
Instead, Canada's method is to show people here what life is like back home. And that's going to happen through a year-long exchange program of sports, culture, education. It's what the leaders are calling the Year of Senegal in Canada. Donna?
All right, David Akin in Senegal tonight. Thanks. Still ahead, a new pattern discovered in space deepens a sonic mystery. There's a lot of excitement around some mysterious radio signals coming from deep space. Canadian scientists have noticed a pattern in the bursts. They come from a single source, 500 million light years from Earth. It's a scientific first, and as Eric Sorensen reports, it has stargazers trying to figure out who or what is sending them.
Fast radio bursts were only first detected 13 years ago from immense explosions millions of light years away. The signals race through the galaxies and the nebulae, stretching as they go, finally spotted on Earth. One radio burst's wavelength light was converted to sound. Thanks to a powerful new Canadian telescope called CHIME near Penticton, BC, scientists have determined that radio bursts can repeat. Watching from York University, Paul Delaney.
The repeating part of it is what is really exciting, because now we stand a chance of figuring out what these things are.
And the latest stunning discovery? A rhythmic pattern.
To see fast radio bursts repeat is one thing. To see them arrive in rhythm is something else again. The signals have now been detected over 4 days and then silence for 12 days. Again, and here's that sound. Over and over for 4 days and then quiet again for 12. And this cycle is repeating every 16.3 days like clockwork. Could it be a message from millions of light years away? Just the idea of intelligence elsewhere in the universe has set the Twitterverse all a-twitter. The notion of life communicating from other galaxies makes some people nervous. One tweeted, "The truth is out there." Others are curious. Maybe they're trying to contact us, or just plain eager. Please tell me it's aliens. And radio signals with a beat? Who knows? Maybe they've got rhythm too. So can we imagine that it's likely that this signal we're picking up was sent by thinking beings? What does our expert, Paul Delaney, have to say?
It is unlikely that this signal that we're picking up was sent by thinking beings.
Oh, Delaney says a more likely scenario is a binary star system, with a signal coming from one star that is lost temporarily when it orbits behind the other.
I'm not reaching out to ET at this point in time. There is much more likely to be an astrophysical explanation.
But could it be a message from far away?
You can't rule it out. I mean, I cannot say categorically.
Well then, we can keep guessing. And as they've said since the discovery of radio signals, stay tuned. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Next, I scored a sit-down with sports superstar Christine Sinclair, who tells me about her next goal. It's only February, and it's already been a banner year for Christine Sinclair. She set an astonishing record. She scored the most goals in international soccer, 185. No woman or man has scored more. She's played professionally for 20 years now and is going to her 4th Olympics. Canada's women's soccer team is qualified for Tokyo 2020. For now, Sinclair is back home in British Columbia, meeting fans and being celebrated for her achievements. I met Sinclair in Vancouver, and she's the consummate Canadian, understated, modest, but with steely resolve to win. I started by asking her about what it feels like to be an international sports superstar.
I think it's a testament to the longevity of my career and how I've been able to adapt with the game. But honestly, just most excited that we're going to another Olympics and getting a shot at the podium.
Yeah. Is that what you always have your eye on, is the next thing rather than, I mean, I know you were proud and it showed when you got that goal and set the record.
Sinclair has done it!
But it's not like you're over the top excited about it, right? Because you're always looking ahead.
Yeah, I've never played soccer just for the goals. I always say I chose a team sport for a reason, just trying to achieve something together.
When people watch you play, they try to figure out what's going on in your head. What do you call that scorer's instinct you have to be at the front of the net at the right time?
I'm not sure. I think I get asked that quite a bit. I honestly think I was born with it. I understand the game. I think I can read it pretty well on the pitch. And then in front of goal, I get asked, what goes on in your mind? It's absolutely nothing. It's just calm, and most times. And I think composed.
So you started when you were 4. You've been at this international level for 20 years?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a time when you score a goal that there's less sparkle to it, less excitement, less?
Of course. I mean, because we play in, I mean, the women's game isn't quite where the men's game is yet, and so we've played in some games in some stadiums where there's like 5 people there and in the middle of nowhere. It's just not the same as scoring in front of like 50,000 fans.
Well, let me ask you about the women's game. How much has it changed in the 20 years that you've been in it?
Night and day. You know, when I first joined the national team, no one cared. There weren't many opportunities for female soccer players around the world. And now you have players completely skipping university to go play pro. And then just at the international stage, I mean, I think you saw it at last year's World Cup. Mm-hmm. It's just growing. And this is just the start.
And you've been a key part of that, right?
I don't know, I've just played.
You've just played, but you are, you know what you are to so many young women, and guys too, and boys playing, right? You are like the crown jewel.
I mean, it's pretty cool to see, like, you're playing at home and there's like young boys wearing your jersey. To be able to see the youngsters, like, being able to dream of representing their country, going to Olympics, going to World Cups. I mean, that's how it started for me.
What's missing from the women's game? What would you like to see? Where would you like to see it go from here?
Equal the men. Every chance that a guy gets, I want a girl to get. We're moving in the right direction, but like at a very slow pace.
And are you one of these people who doesn't want to jinx it by saying what your goal is in Tokyo, or do you have a goal in mind?
We're going with podium this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're sick of bronze, so. People can take what they want from that.
I'm taking it she's going for gold. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Here Canada is Vancouver, where the Olympic cauldron was relit to mark 10 years since the city hosted the 2010 Olympic Games. Thanks for watching. Robin Gill will be here at the anchor desk over the next few days, and I'll see you here again next week. Bye-bye.